All right, podcast peeps, this is episode 9 of Mosier Talks. Today we are going to talk about website performance, hence the nerdy outfit, and how it affects your rankings in the big G. So stay tuned, it's going to be a great one, and it starts now. All right, so you didn't actually expect me to keep the Google garb on, did you? I can't imagine having to look at that throughout an entire podcast, so I took it off for your benefit. But today I want to talk to you about website performance, and specifically page load times and how to optimize your website and to get it loading quickly, especially on mobile devices, because mobile device users are more impatient than desktop device users. It's a proven fact. So anyway, the first impression that you have to make on your website when it loads is how fast it actually loads. People are impatient. Have you ever I'll admit, I'm one of those people that if I click on something and I wait more than 2 or 3 seconds, I'm not even going to continue to wait for it to load. I'll just go on to the next. A lot of people are like that. So how do you fix your website if it's loading slow? Well, I'll go over some of those ideas here in just a second, but let me also talk to you about what actually kills the loading and the performance of your website. One of the ones that's very overlooked is a redirect. And a redirect happens when somebody clicks on a link to your website, they go to that link, and then that link says, oh no, the page is moved, it's not here anymore, it's over there. And then what happens is it sends back a response that says, hey, this page moved. So now your phone or your browser or whatever has to go, and it goes to this new link, and then it goes to there, and has to reload the page all over again. So usually that happens pretty transparently to you. Way to see if it happens is if you go to like a website and you click on something and the address changes in the address bar. Redirects are a good thing from an SEO standpoint when you're changing a site around and maybe you're actually moving content and something that used to be, on page A is now on page B, or you combine page A and page B into a page C that never existed before. That's an instance where redirects are good. But redirects are bad when, for instance, you have an HTTP version of your website, an insecure version of your website, and you want to redirect to an HTTPS version of your website, but you never actually update all the links that are on your website. So you could be going to the HTTPS version, but all the links, every time you click a link in your menu, you're trying to go to the old version, which was the HTTP, then you're getting redirected. And this is starting to confuse me, so I'm just going to kind of leave it at that because I'm sure I'm probably confusing some of you guys too. Well, so the next thing I want to cover is how do you know if you might have a slow website or a website loading problem? Well, the good news is there's a lot of tools out there that'll tell you that. Google itself has a Google Pagespeed test that actually goes through your website and it ranks you on certain things and how your website's configured. And it goes into pretty deep detail about what you can do to fix things. Now, theirs is one of probably the least forgiving as far as having things compressed a certain way and everything like that. But Google is probably a good one. There's a site called Pingdom, and it's tools.pingdom.com, Pingdom. That's also a good one for determining your load time. You can actually sit there and pull your site up from different servers all over the globe, and that comes in really handy for trying to determine things. And then another thing you can do to determine whether you might have a slow loading problem is your own Google Analytics. There's actually metrics in there that can help you determine if you have load time, and you can actually segment your traffic between desktop traffic and mobile traffic because your site may run great on a desktop browser, but it may suck on a mobile device or vice versa. So it's a good way to see that, especially when you're going through your Google Analytics and you're looking at your bounce rate. It's always a good idea to flip over to the technology side and see if your bounce rate's higher on either desktop or mobile, because that could indicate that you do have a responsiveness problem, or you have some other sort of problem that's causing your site to render differently on two different devices. So now let's say that you've got your mobile responsive test done and you got this list of stuff that you got to fix. And 9 times out of 10, what we find is images are the number one thing that's causing your site to load. What happens is when you take a picture with your cell phone or you purchase a stock image or something like that, a lot of times what people will do is they'll just take that image and they'll just upload it raw right to the website. Well, the truth is, the website doesn't really need that high resolution of an image in order to get the point across that you're trying to make, or to make the site look right and everything like that. So there's plugins that you can purchase that will actually take and resize those images to the sizes needed by your website, by your website's theme, assuming you're using WordPress, that will resize them. There's also websites that you can sign up for that you can actually run those images through, and it will smush them, so to speak, without better terminology, and make them something that's acceptable for the size that you need on your website, and it keeps them from being so big that the browser can't load it. I mean, I'll give you an example. An average iPhone picture, if you were to actually send it and upload it straight to a website, is about 4 megabytes in size. So on a slower connection, that's going to take a few seconds in and of itself just to render. However, if you run it through, say, Kraken, which is an image management or an image compression website that we subscribe to here at MosierData, if you run the image through there, you might get out with a 120, 180K image, because it'll take it down to the smallest dimensions that it needs to be at in order to look correct, and then it actually compresses the image and takes out a bunch of the the metadata and stuff like that that can kind of explode the image a little bit. And so you're talking about a 200, 500, 700% decrease in the size of the image. It makes it load nice and fast. Also, on the subject of images, is a lot of websites have what we call a slider on the page, where you might have 7 or 8 different slides that scroll through every few seconds, and they talk about how great you are or whatever. I'm not really sure. We don't advocate the use of sliders here personally, but some people like to have them. Sliders, just by the mere fact that they're trying to load 8 images at a time, and your phone or your browser is trying to load those before it tries to render the screen. Even if it does lazy load, it still has to load them. So that can increase your load time of your website as well. Some other common things that we see people do are videos. Actually, people will upload a video to the website and try and host it from there. There's a couple of things that come into play when you do that. Number one is you're kind of dependent on your hosting provider's bandwidth. If you're hosted with us, it's not so much of a thing. We have a dedicated server and a dedicated circuit and all that kind of stuff. But if you're on, say, GoDaddy, or one of these other cheap hosts, HostGator or something like that, where you're sharing a site or sharing a server with 30,000 other sites, then bandwidth is probably going to be at a premium. So that's going to cause the video to load slower and everything like that. Now, there are streaming technologies that you can use to upload your video. The biggest one and the most well-known is YouTube, obviously. So if you actually take your video, you upload it to your YouTube channel and embed it in your page, then your browser doesn't necessarily have to download that video in order to render it. You can actually stream it right from YouTube servers, and YouTube has that kind of down, seeing as it's a Google service. Google's not going to penalize you for that. So if you are running WordPress and you're not on a managed hosting service like us or WP Engine, or there's a number of them that are out there, you're going to want to consider looking at a caching plugin. W3 Total Cache is one that we use and recommend here. There are several of them for WordPress, and what they do is they basically will store a static version of your site that doesn't have to load all the, do all the database queries and everything that happens when you load your WordPress site without one. It actually speeds up the delivery, because the actual page of your site, instead of having to be generated every time that somebody requests it, like it does with a standard WordPress, it actually gets generated whenever you make a change, and it's stored on disk, and it's just served up as a file, so it's lightning fast. The same thing happens with database queries and things like that. A caching plugin can use object caching to say, if on your homepage, for instance, you have the list of your last 5 blog posts, that's a query that queries a database that produces those last 5 blog posts. If it's the same every single time, what we can do is we can cache that query so that the results come back instantly. They come from memory instead of from the database. So caching plugin is definitely a good thing to look into if you don't have one already, or if you don't have a managed service. If you do have a managed service, such as our SiteCare Plus, or like I said, WP Engine, and there's a few others out there, you definitely want to check with your hosting provider before you try a caching plugin, because most of them have their own proprietary mechanism, and so they'll probably just disable it if you try and put it on there anyway. So anyway, I hope what I've talked about today gives you a little bit of insight into your website's performance and how important it is, especially for people that are visiting from mobile devices. It affects your search engine rankings. It affects so many things. Let's get your website tuned up. If you get into running a Pingdom test or a Google Pagespeed test and you really don't know how to optimize it any further than the points that I've made, or you run across something that that kind of confuses you, feel free to give us a call here at the office. We'll take a look at it, let you know if we can fix it or not. Well, I'm not going to say if we can fix it or not. I'll say we'll let you know how much it's going to cost to fix it, and we'll help you out. Anyway, till next time, this is Jim. This is my podcast. Thanks for watching. All right, so I'm back. I hope you really didn't expect me to keep the Google hat and glasses on. I know it's probably something that you're going to go to bed having nightmares about. So I figured I'd spare you for the rest of the podcast. Blah. I talk with my hands. That's what I do.
He's a visual talker. I did.
This podcast is going to be great. That was... Or no, that wasn't a very good Trump impression, was it?